grateful for my family, my biological family, who's here still in Dallas, but also my extended family, which includes those volunteers and members of CCSOC, and many people here at the King Center who this place was a site for so many volunteer projects, mobilizations, activations, and engagements with me over the years that have helped to shape a commitment to service that continues to extend through the work that we do at the Children's Defense Fund, where I've now found a home. So thank you all for the ways in which you're putting your hands to this work, and for, to whatever extent my journey can note an element of that success. Then there's also that being shaped today for some young person in Watoto Village who's experiencing the tabling with either the drumming that's happening in the circle or the tabling that's happening by the ladies in the society, or getting some resources from Children's Defense Fund in one of those tents or booths. All of that is happening to shape young people here right now. So I want to thank you all for being a part of it, particularly those of you who were part of the core committee to put this on, and the team here at the King Center, who's been so hospitable to the festival for so many years. So if you would just join me in thanking those who helped to put this on. I do want to share just a few words. This feels really formal to me, so I'm going to move it. I want to share a little bit about kind of what we've been up to over the course of these years. Children's Defense Fund is now celebrating its 50th anniversary as well. CDF was founded in 1973 by Marion Wright Edelman, really to be able to turn the attention of the country to all of our children, and to do so in a way that is part of the legacy of the Black freedom struggle. CDF, of course, was birthed out of, Marion Wright Edelman helped to birth the concept of the Poor People's Campaign with Martin Luther King. But part of what was happening in the late 60s to early 70s was the country got tired of talking about race. Kind of the way the country's tired about talking about racial justice and racial equity right now. And in order to make sure that we continue to talk about these issues, there were several things that were happening. There were organizations being established to focus attention on these challenges around racial justice and to seed campaigns to fight back against poverty in our community. And there were the creative and artistic expressions, putting together the kind of festivals like Harambee, the first in the country, where people began to celebrate our heritage and an expression of this African and Africana heritage that needed to be a part of the kind of understanding, self-actualization, and well-being that would lead to the civic engagement so that we were building the communities we needed for our young people to thrive. And so while all of that came together 2 generations ago, we come now to another critical moment where we've got work to do. And so what I want to talk about is the work that we're trying to do at Children's Defense Fund, and really, I'm shameless in this, right? I'm shameless, so I'm going to tell you up front what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to agitate and instigate you getting engaged in this work, no matter where it can be. Whether that happens with Children's Defense Fund, whether it happens with CCSOC, I want this work to come together because we don't have enough workers with their hands to the plow for our children. We talk about our mission this way at Children's Defense Fund, that we are building communities so young people grow up with dignity, hope, and joy. We talk about it that way because no young person can have all they need if you only want to intervene with the young person. Because children don't grow up in programs. Children grow up in families. Children grow up with parents, and if you can't throw the parents away and just take care of the kids. And so you have to wrestle with all the things you believe about Black parents if you're going to help and support Black children. And here at this moment in our history, in this country, we've got to focus on Black children. I know it's politic to talk about all children, but can I tell y'all some secrets here? It's not that many of us, so we can just talk, right? We'll just talk and y'all talk back to me. Is that okay?
That's okay. Yeah.
I'll tell you a secret. Number one, the majority of America's children are Black or brown. Since 2020, it has been the case that if you want to talk about children in America, you're talking about Black and brown people. So you can't talk about children and not talk about race in America. And you can't talk about race sustainably if you're not talking about children. And so we can't have our best civil rights or racial justice agendas and not talk about education for our kids. We can't have our best civil rights and racial justice agendas and not talk about economics and making sure the parents have what they need. We can't talk about these things and not talk about violence in our communities because that is what our parents want us to be talking about. Ask me how I know.
How do you know?
Thank you. She's been here before. I started working with the Children's Defense Fund. It was in the pandemic in December of 2020. Very quickly, as we began to come out of the pandemic, one of the things that we have engaged is in 30 states across the country, including Texas, at 200 sites in 100 cities, we have something called CDF Freedom Schools. These freedom schools are about literacy and leadership development where black and brown kids get books that have black and brown people in them. Now, I know it doesn't sound like that should be a thing, but it is a thing. Because while a disproportionate number of the textbooks across the United States are produced here in Texas, they still don't have black and brown children in them. And so children grow up believing that they're not the global majority when they actually are. Children grow up believing that their stories should not be centered when they actually should. And so in the freedom schools, these 15,000 children and families who are touched across the country get to see themselves in book. And you know how every freedom schools day begins? It's Saturday at Harambee and freedom schools in the house. It's Saturday at Harambee and freedom schools in the house. We begin with Harambee, inviting everyone to pull together. We begin with Harambee. And we sing our song and we talk about there being something inside children that is so strong that they're overcoming the obstacles in their community, those that we have put up for them. Why do I say that? I say that not just because there's a Harambee connection. I say it because that intervention and that engagement with children includes and engages their parents, and we have to do that wherever we want to care for our children. I say that because programs are powerful and they have the opportunity to intervene in the ways we have known schooling and education around us. I say that because when I entered CDF in the midst of the pandemic, as we began to re-engage in freedom schools across the country, I knew that the only way you know what to do for children is to ask them. The only way you know what black parents need is to ask them. And in order to do this job, I had to move to Washington, D.C. And our work at Children's Defense Fund is in policy, trying to get things into and through the White House. Anybody know the address for the White House? 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. There's another 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. It's on the sunny south side at St. Philip's Center. And so when we decided what we were going to do to take ideas to Washington, D.C. and the White House for what we should be doing with our black and brown children, I decided that we should start at 1600 Pennsylvania on the south side of Dallas. And so we went to St. Philip's. And we talked to the Freedom School scholars there. We talked to the servant leader interns, the college students who we trained to run those Freedom Schools. And we talked to the parents in the Freedom Schools. And we asked them, what are the things that are making it difficult for you to raise your children to thrive the way you want? And what they told us at St. Philip's is the same thing they told us at Christ the King United Church of Christ in St. Louis. And it's the same thing they told us when we went to the Emmaus Center in Peoplestown in Atlanta. And it's the same thing they told us when we went to spend time with folks in Charlotte, North Carolina. There are three things that black parents want us to focus on. And I tell you right now, because it's time for y'all to vote. I tell you right now because it echoes across the country. The three things they want us focused on are education. When you ask parents what's making it difficult for the children to thrive, the first thing they talk about is schools. Now, they talk about it in different ways, but it tells me we've got to have a positive and a powerful education agenda that is something different than what we're experiencing right now. They talk about education. The second thing they talk about is economics. You know what they don't say? They don't say that the GDP in America is going down. They don't say that. They say it costs too much to meet the grocery bill. They say that I know I appreciate this child tax credit thing, but the child tax credit shows up when I file my taxes in February, March, and April. But these teenage boys keep showing up what they face in the grocery, they face in the refrigerator for the groceries every day. And so that doesn't come fast enough. They want us to focus on economics. And then they also want us to focus on safety. Different ways, it's talked about in different kinds of ways, but the violence that continues to visit our communities and our neighborhoods is not what's on the core of the agenda in Washington, D.C. Which told me something. I couldn't just focus in Washington, D.C. because child advocates there aren't talking about these things in that way. I was going to tell y'all some secrets. Can I tell you some more secrets? The child advocacy and the public policy conversation in Washington, D.C. are not informed by 1600 Pennsylvania on the sunny south side of Dallas. They're not informed by the south side of Chicago where I was yesterday. Rather, they're informed by people who believe they can get certain things done in their own interest so that they feel good about what they have done, not that they have transformed the situation in a neighborhood. And I believe that we best do our work when we are connected closest to the ground. I believe that proximity to pain is the closest place to get to power. And that is where we should inform our public policy. And so it's critical that we engage in this work as we do today of celebration, but it's also critical that we come with a listening ear. We've got to hear what folk are saying and what they are calling for us to do. And then we have to engage in transformation. Now, it was important for me to come to have this conversation, especially knowing it's right before an election, not just because it's my hometown. It was important for me to have it because Texas moves the needle in the nation. 1 of every 10 children born this year in America will be born within the borders of the state of Texas. That has been the case for some time. It is also the case that this state has challenges with caring for children in ways that we need to, particularly black and brown children. The reality is 15% of all America's children live in poverty, and you're more likely to live in poverty if you're in the South, if you are under the age of 5, and if you are black or brown. And of course, your access to wealth and resources have everything to do with the access to health and how well you'll do in school. So I come here in Texas because we got some choices to make. We have choices to make about the election for who will lead the country. We have choices to make about who will lead in Congress, and we have choices to make about who's going to lead in the Senate. And there's a whole number of issues going all the way down the ballot. I want y'all to promise me you're going to go all the way down the ballot. Amen. Amen, and I shade to the people who already voted. Because we've got some critical work to do. I was talking with our friends from Community Change outside. Community Change Action is a mobilization grassroots organization that's led by an alumni of the Children's Defense Fund, brother by the name of Dorian Warren. And we talked about the fact that it was about 30 years ago that the Children's Defense Fund stood side by side with Community Change to go into neighborhoods across the country with black mamas, big mamas, and Hispanic abuelitas to tell the country that we needed a tax credit to take care of children. There is only a child tax credit in the first place because CDF and Community Change got together and came into neighborhoods and community centers like this and listened to mamas, big mamas, and abuelitas. And in the context of the pandemic, we did something that this country had never done before. We made sure everybody got it. It was actually the case that we had a support for people who needed support to raise their children and needed extra resources to raise their children. But you know, we had hundreds of thousands of families that we said made too little money. They didn't make enough money to get the money they needed to take care of their households. And so we fixed it. We fixed it for 9 months. For 9 months, we decided you should get the support when these big old teenage boys are putting their faces in your refrigerator. And we began to send monthly checks. We decided that we wanted to be like all the other countries that we like to tell what to do. You know, we like to be the moral arbiter of the globe. But you know, every English-speaking industrialized country on the face of the planet has a regular child allowance. So if you got a child, you get a check. Everybody, universally, except us. And so we did what other nations have done. And we proved that we could lift half of all America's children out of poverty. We lifted half of black and brown children out of poverty. But we only did it for 9 months because we couldn't keep the moral courage and we couldn't keep up the pressure to make a Democratic president with a Democratic Senate and a Democratic House get it done. Now, let me be very clear. I have no permanent friends and I have no permanent enemies. I only have permanent interests. My interests are on the children. This is not a bipartisan conversation. It is not. It is a transpartisan conversation. It is bigger than any of these candidates. And they ought to be accountable for our children. And I say this because that resource that we had at one time, we can't have again. And I'm going to say there's only one of these candidates running for president who's talking about child poverty. I don't have to tell y'all which one. I say it because we have to get that legislation through a United States Senate. And we made compromises and got a piece of that legislation and put it back. We made compromises with Republicans and Democrats and put it back before the Senate this past year, and they wouldn't even vote on it. And when they finally voted on it, we couldn't get the votes. We could not get one person from the Republican Party to vote on it, to vote for it, even though they had negotiated to get tax credits for research and development for corporations in the same bill that we have for the children. I say this because that Senate is in the balance. And for the first time in a long time, there's an opportunity to send someone to Washington, D.C., to the United States Senate from the state of Texas who actually cares about a child tax credit and black and brown children. There's an opportunity to send someone who's been advocating for children's health and access to health care. There's an opportunity to send someone who's been working for education reform in this state. And y'all have the power to do that. I can't do that from where I live outside of Washington, D.C. So I had to come here and tell you that I need you to vote and vote right. That's any Deltas in here? There's a Delta over there. Frankie Muse Freeman, former national president of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. I was at a dinner with Frankie shortly before she passed away untimely. Actually, she lived a long life. She was about the closest thing there was to a living founder for a long time for Delta Sigma Theta. She was at a banquet in St. Louis where I lived, where we were talking about rallying people to vote. And she got up and she told people, don't be telling everybody to vote, tell the right people to vote. Frankie got up from her wheelchair with her cane, and she said to everyone, I say to you, vote and vote right.
Yes.
We have choices to make. And the economic balance gives an opportunity for CDF to stand beside community change again in the first 100 days of the new administration, because we need to put the child tax credit back on the table in the way that we had it in 2021 and make sure we lift children out of poverty again. But that's insufficient, dear friends. We also have to do work. I think I've turned this off. We also have to make sure that we're doing our work in these other areas. Parents care about economics. Parents care about education. I'm going to tell y'all another secret. I'm telling all the business. The strongest organizers and advocates in the country are afraid to touch public education. They are taught on the grassroots level, don't touch education, it's too divisive. And because people have not touched it, we have been left with the same circumstances that led the Children's Defense Fund to join with its partners in the 1990s when I was in middle school and high school in this town to create the Black Community Crusade for Children. The failure of the public education system that I began to talk about this way, it is a failure and a crisis of mission of public education. We've begun to talk about public education as if it is to prepare cogs for the machine, our kids as cogs for a corporate machine. And that has never been what public education is for. Can we correct the record?
Correct.
Can we correct the record?
Yes.
Public education and its mission is to prepare an educated citizenry to engage the franchise. It is to make sure you don't have ignorant people voting. It is to make sure that we have access to fully understand the issues. The average newspaper, for people who still read the newspaper, is written at an 8th grade level because the average public citizen is not reading at higher than that level. We have now, I told you before, in 2020, the CDF Texas office did a study of how we are engaging in the impact of taking social studies and civics out of our schools. That was before they were banning books. They were just taking the same books and taking social studies out of the curriculum. They were taking civics out of the curriculum. And you want to know the impact? The impact is this. As we studied here in the state of Texas, if you take these things out of schools and you take them out of the books, then black and brown children, once they graduate, don't volunteer, don't vote, and don't lift their voice. What we found is by taking that out of the studies in 7th and 8th grade, it keeps a 19-year-old from understanding that they need to vote once they've got the opportunity. And the only thing that saves a black or brown young person in Texas to engage in democracy, if they don't get it undergrad, if they don't get it in middle school and high school, is if they go to college. The campus is the only thing that keeps them in the project of democracy. Now, y'all know we ain't all going to these campuses. So what it ultimately does is it takes black and brown voters out of the total voting age population. It takes black and brown young people, voters, out in those most critical years when they're developing their voting habits. It takes them out of the game. So you got to work to get a 40-year-old to go and vote because they didn't start engaging when they were 18 and had the opportunity. But that started when you didn't teach them Texas history in 6th grade. So we need a robust engagement around education. I believe we're on to something at CDF. I believe the culturally responsive pedagogy that tells young people that they can see themselves in the books and see their stories, and so they love reading because they're reading about themselves, has something to teach the world. Now, I'm here to tell y'all, I was last week with the organization called the Education Rights Institute at the University of Virginia. They've been putting out resources because this week was also the 60th anniversary of Title VI. It is that piece of legislation that calls for us to make sure that we're not discriminating in the context of education. And on the 60th anniversary of Title VI, it's like we need to start over again. And because I know we got people in 30 states and 200 sites in 100 cities, I'm calling on the team at CDF to say we've got something to say about reforming education in this country. But what we need is people who are willing to walk with us. So we got to have something to say about education. We got to have something to say about economics. We got to have something to say about violence. And we have to have something to say about violence in our communities that is other than what we're saying to the children who are being traumatized by the violence. I say this part for last because I usually have to run out after I say this. The problem with violence, I sat and got a, I was on the road a lot, and so I had to find a place to get a haircut because I think it's a hygiene issue. It ain't a style issue, it's a hygiene issue. And I sat with a dude who was literally in New York. He had on the screen in the barbershop the Boondocks. But he was talking like Uncle Remus. Because everything that was a problem in the neighborhood, he blamed on the kids in the neighborhood. As if they were raising themselves, and if they were raising themselves, as if they chose to raise themselves. He talked about violence and young people engaging in violence as if they chose this, as if they had options and this is what they chose off the shelf as their cookies. He talked about it as if there were nurturing people in the lives of all these children. He talked about it as if they allocated the budget at City Hall. He talked about it as if they were the ones who were making the decisions at the school board committee. He talked about it as if they were the ones who elected these people and then did not hold them accountable. He talked about it as if they had their hands on the resources and they chose violence. They didn't choose violence. We chose it upon them. We choose to allow access to guns. We choose to allow elected officials who will keep the money flowing from the gun lobby rather than taking care of our children. You do understand. Anybody in here know the #1 cause of death for children in America? It's guns. It's guns. And I do a lot of work with church folk. So I talk about that part about beating your weapons into plowshares, spears and the pruning hooks. And I know y'all ain't got no plowshares and pruning hooks, but that just means, what does it mean to take a gun and beat it away until it becomes something that you can actually till the ground with? And what is the moral responsibility and obligation for people of faith who live in a country that chooses its guns rather than its children? We're grateful that one of the people running for office was the executive sponsor of the first White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention. And we stand and we've advocated around those issues, and that there's more work for us to do. We've got to get a wrangle and a handle on these guns, and we got to get serious about it. And frankly, and I'm going to say the same thing I said after we were talking about this with one of the school shootings here in Texas. This is the deal. Somebody has to be held accountable when our kids die. Now, I got to get more specific. I realize this. What I'm saying is somebody got to lose an election over this.
Right.
You got to know how your congresspeople are voting as it relates to gun legislation. And if they're not voting in a way that takes guns out of schools or makes them more difficult to get to for people, and I'm not just talking about mental health concerns, I'm talking about everybody. I'm from Dallas, but I grew up, I spent 20 years in St. Louis. St. Louis, they say everybody. If it doesn't make guns more difficult to get to for everybody, if they don't vote that way, they don't earn your vote. And you can't just not vote for them. You have to organize against them. It's going to take the best of our policies. It's going to take the best of our programs, but we're going to have to build some power, people. I know that's a dirty word, so you got to say it with me so y'all can't point at me and say he was talking crazy. Say power. Power. Say power. Power. Say it like you want some power. Power. Say it like you got some power. Power. What we have to exhibit and what we have to display and what we have to distribute on behalf of our children is our power. We get power when we show up at school board meetings. We get power when we show up to community meetings. We get power when we show up to church. I don't know what church you go to. I would not besmirch your church, nor your pastor. I tell you to go to church. I tell black people to go to church because church is the only place that black people own and run lock, stock, and barrel.
Yes.
And it's the only setting of our lives that we are fully politicized. People tell me about, I believe in, I got memberships. One of the great ancestors who I honor is Samuel DeWitt Proctor. He talked about people who are members of all these fraternities. He said they know so many handshakes you think they got the palsy. I know a bunch of handshakes you think I got the palsy. Members of all these groups, I appreciate them. But liberation ain't coming through Kappa Alpha Psi. Liberation ain't coming through Jack and Jill or the Boule. Liberation is not coming through the National Association of Black Accountants because we've not politicized those spaces. We have socialized them. The only space that you got where you can talk the way you need to have sanctuary, to be real and be free with your thoughts is your church. So I encourage you to get in and make sure that your church is not only your spiritual home, but a political home for you. And make sure that your political home has a political home. Organize the church. Last night I spent time, I'm be done. We got to close the building. Last night I was with 200 faith-based organizers at the Live Free Illinois State Convening in Chicago and Oklahoma. We were talking about the fact that they had won in the state legislature millions of dollars to create healing centers throughout the state. Places for wellness and connection in community where people were building power together but also taking care of each other. And it makes sense because these were Christian folk. They served Jesus. And all he came doing was preaching, teaching, and healing. But we forget that last part. And the healing of the world requires an organized church, an organized community to engage together. And so this is what I've come to do. I've come to agitate you, to organize for power to use on behalf of children. Because our job is not to not leave them behind. It's bigger than that. Our job is not to not forget our children. We can do better than that.
That's right.
Our job is to create a community where they can sing and dance like nobody's watching.
Right.
The experiences that you had today of watching young people running around here with pickles in jars that was dipped in Kool-Aid.
Right.
The experience you had today of young people running around here with slushies that cost a little bit more than I really wanted to pay. I'm just saying. The experience you had of seeing young people, I saw one young dude running from a bee as if it was going to kill him. But while he was running, he wasn't worried. While he was running, he wasn't fretting. While he was running, he had no care in the world because on these grounds, he experienced sanctuary. He was seen, and he was safe, and he was secure. And if we focus on making sure that young people are seen and safe and secure, then they will experience the well-being that we talk about. And we will know because they will sing and dance like nobody's watching. this is our call, family. This is our work. And we can only get it done together. And so I want to invite you. I'm going to put some people on the spot real fast. I'm going home tomorrow. It's an interesting thing when I get to go from home to home. The home is where my 9-year-old baby girl named Amber is, who shows me what child well-being is every day. And so I'm going to go to that home. But here in this home, I need to leave some connections. I came here with my organizing mind and project very clear. As a matter of fact, since I got the invitation to come to this, I was very, very clear about something I wanted to do. I wanted to get the Children's Defense Fund team that's focused on policy and power building and programs like the CDF Freedom Schools connected with my family here who celebrates Harambee through the Citizens Committee to Save Our Children. So I wanted to make sure that those two entities were connected. And so I did that. But I also wanted to make sure that people were connected to both of those entities. I know people come to Harambee every year, they got it on their calendar, but they don't volunteer to make it happen. One of my dear friends from college was out there, Dr. Maisha Taylor. She's a remarkable doctor. She said, this is great. She's volunteering. She's got me. This is great. She said, but it should be bigger. I said, you know, it has been bigger.
Yeah. We've been here 50 years.
I said it has been bigger. And when she shows up with a vision, she got a glimpse. And this is what we do in these celebrations and activations. We get a glimpse. And so I want to invite people to connect with the Citizens Committee to Save Our Children. The immediate leader is here. I don't really know what title my mama got. She just be doing stuff.
Right.
I know she coordinates the Watoto Village here at Harambee. Yes.
There you go.
So if you care about children, the Othello Beck. That's God's honey. One of the founders. If you want to connect with the Citizens Committee to Save Our Children, it is a remarkable organization. It helped to nurture and shape me, helped to send me off to college, helped me to see service here. You can see my mama. If you want to connect with the Children's Defense Fund, to advocate for these policies, to try to advance, to try to organize in this community, I want to invite you to see Dr. Brandy Taylor Dede. She's our state director here in Texas. She's a remarkable educator, school psychologist, organizer for this work, who came back to CDF after starting her early career. Yes, please stand. Please stand. Y'all didn't tell my mama to stand. Okay. Brandy tired. She's been here volunteering all day, brought team in from East Texas, brought folks in to be able to share and connect with community. So please connect with Dr. Brandy. She's a remarkable leader. We're glad that she returned to the team last year to lead this team. We got folks in Austin and Houston and East Texas and here. We're going to be building all over the state because I'm real clear. I've been hanging with some of my crew here talking about if we can get stuff done in Texas. Right? Let's think long term about this. There is a witness in Texas. There are the demographics in Texas. There's a long-term fight in Texas that if we can get it done here, we can get it done for the nation. That's the conversation me and Dr. Haynes were having about how we align these things. If we can get it done here, we can think in a 10 to 15-year trajectory. And 50-year-old organizations can think like that. So here we have the opportunity to do the thing. So I invite you to please connect with Mom. Please connect with Dr. Brandy. Let's build together. We want to find ways to connect and build, and we want to find ways to listen. So if there are places we need to be listening more than we talking, then let us know. If there's work that we're called to do together, then invite us in, because we want to build with you. Thank y'all so much for hanging and listening. I appreciate y'all. I invite you to